In this video, we'll work through 5 worksheets. Each worksheet introduces another aspect of the if function. The if function, its syntax has 3 parts. First, there is a logical test, something that returns a true or false result. Then, following a comma, we instruct Excel as to what to do should the logical test return a true. Then a comma, and then we instruct Excel as to what it should do should the logical test return a false. So let's work rapidly through these. What we want to do in this instance is take a look at our budget for each of these departments, and then the actual income for each of these departments. And we want to indicate within budget when the actual amount is less than or equal to the budget amount. Otherwise, we want to indicate that it's over budget. So we'll use an if statement to do that, and we'll set it up just the way we're instructed in the instructions, equals if. The instructions say when the actual amount, so I'll go ahead and point to the actual amount, is less than or equal to the budget amount. All right, comma. If that's true, then we'll indicate in quotes, since it's text, that our budget is within budget. And if that's false, we will indicate that it is over budget. In quotes again, since it is text. Closing parenthesis, you always have to balance the parentheses in any kind of a function in Excel. This indicates that it's over budget. And the first thing you want to do is just take a look at the data and see if what status is telling you is what you observed. Actually, we spent $521,000. Our budget was $430,000. So yes, we're over budget. I'll go ahead and double click on my autofill node, and Excel will calculate for each of the departments whether we are within or over budget. I'll use the sum function to calculate our total budget in actual values. Sum, here's the budget. Because I used relative cell references, once I get that, I'll just copy that across. That will give me the actual budget, as you can see. And I can just copy this. I don't have to write it again since I use relative cell references. It's just looking to the 2 cells to its left. I'll just Control C to copy that, move my cursor down here, and Control V to paste it. And it tells me that even though I have 3 of my 5 departments over budget, that my company as a total finished the year or the period within budget. All right, let's move to the next sheet. This worksheet will continue with our understanding of the if function. We're going to take a look at billing practices for a company that sells crude oil. They have a pricing structure. When their customers purchase up to and including 1,000 gallons of crude oil, they pay $51 per gallon. But when they purchase over 1,000 gallons, they pay $45 per gallon. And just to be clear, they pay $45 per gallon for both the first 1,000 gallons and everything over 1,000 gallons. So we'll do that calculation equals if, and we'll check the value to our left. We'll leave that relative because we want to copy this down, and we'll ask if it's less than or equal to 1,000. If it is, we want to take the value to our left, which we'll leave relative, and multiply that times the price per gallon for quantities of crude oil less than or equal to 1,000 gallons. I'll need to make that absolute because that value only appears in one place on the worksheet. I'm going to copy this down. If it's false, I want to take the value to my left and multiply that times the price per gallon for quantities in excess of 1,000 gallons. And again, I need to make that absolute because I want to copy this down. Press enter. And I'll just copy this down. And I get my pricing. All right, let's go on to the next sheet. Now, it's not always that straightforward, and you'll notice that in the previous sheet, we typed in 1,000 gallons. That's a pretty static reference. We want these references to be dynamic. We may want to change both the prices and the quantities that qualify you for those prices. So here we're going to take a look at a nested if function. We have more than two possible outcomes, true or false. So we need to nest if statements in order to provide for these. In Excel, you can nest up to 7 if statements within an if statement. So they go 7 layers deep. Let's take a look at this. What we have here is the instance where if a customer buys up to and including 1,000 gallons, they pay $51 a gallon. If a customer buys more than 1,000 up to and including 2,500 gallons, they pay $45 a gallon. And then for anything over 2,500 gallons, they pay $38 a gallon. You can see I've written the price break quantities here to the right. I'll go ahead and create this if statement. We'll do if. We'll take a look at the value to our left. This is the number of gallons the customer bought. If it's less than or equal to, I'll go ahead and go up here and point to my gallon quantity and lock that, since we're going to copy this down. This value appears only one place in our workbook. We're going to make that an absolute reference. If that's the case, then we're going to multiply the value to our left times the cost at that level of purchase and make that absolute as well. Now, if that's false, then we want to do another if statement. We want to take a look again and see if the quantity to our left is less than or equal to 2,500 gallons. Now, granted, 1,000 gallons is less than or equal to 2,500, but if it was less than or equal to 1,000, the function would have already returned an answer and stopped. So if it gets to this point, we know that it's more than 1,000 gallons. But we're trying to determine now if it's more than 2,500 gallons. We'll make this absolute. Then we want to take the value to our left and multiply it times that cost. We'll again make that absolute. Now, if it's not less than or equal to 1,000 gallons and not less than or equal to 2,500 gallons, then it's got to be more than 2,500 gallons. So we don't have to put in another if statement. We're just going to take the value to our left and multiply it times our lowest price, make that absolute. Then I have to balance the parentheses. There's one for the most recent if statement. Here's the one for the first if statement. Press enter. There's our calculation. I'll double click and copy it down. And there we have the solution. Let's go on to the next worksheet. Now we're just going to take the concept of a nested if statement and take it out to its extreme. I'm going to calculate the grades. I have a grade scale over here just for reference. I wouldn't really do this. I would use a lookup statement here, but practice makes perfect. So we'll just nest several if statements. We need to do this through a process of elimination. We have to follow an order. We're going to go from highest to lowest so that we eliminate things along the way. Start with the if statement. If the value to my left is greater than or equal to a 90, then we give them an A. If the value to my left is greater than or equal to an 80, then we'll give them a B. If the value to my left is greater than or equal to a 70, then a C. If the value to my left is greater than or equal to a 60, then a D. And if it's not an A, if it's not a B, if it's not a C, if it's not a D, then it's an F. We don't have to test for the last condition. Now we balance the parentheses for each if statement. You can see them change color to match. Then we finally get to the black parenthesis. That indicates that we've got them all balanced. I pressed enter. I'll go ahead and center this so it's a little easier to see. That looks right. I'll double click on that. Just take a look. The grades do look correct all the way down. And since these are all relative cell references, I can get the average grade for the course by equals average. Selecting all of the scores, closing the parenthesis. Go ahead and gives me an average score of 74.27. I can place my cursor here, do a Control-C to copy, move my cursor here, do a Control-V to paste, and it gives me the average grade for the class of a C. Okay, let's move to the next worksheet. This is something we do quite often in business. We have a situation where there are multiple criteria. So in the previous examples, we have had one element in our logical test to see if the value we're looking at was greater than or equal to, less than or equal to some other value. But what about instances where we have to check for 2 or 3 or 4 criteria? Well, there are functions in Excel, 2 of them, the AND function and the OR function. We're going to take a look at the AND function here. The AND function tests multiple criteria. And in the AND function, all of the criteria have to return true in order for the function to return a true. In other words, criteria A has to be true, and B true, and C true, and D true, and it will return a true. With the OR function, if any of the criteria return a true, then the function will return a true in the logical portion of the if statement. So if condition A is true, or condition B is true, or condition C is true, any of those, then it returns a true. So what we have here is an instance where we're going to make a matching contribution to someone's 401k, and we need to make sure before we do that they're full-time employees and that they have 3 or more years of employment. If they have that, then we'll contribute 5% of their salary into their retirement fund. If they don't, then we don't contribute anything. So let's go ahead and put in the test. We'll start with our if statement, then an AND function. We're going to take a look to see if status over here is full-time. And we're going to take a look to see if the years employed is greater than or equal to 3. Now, if both of those are true, then we're going to go ahead and take 5%, 0.05, and multiply that times their salary, and that will be the contribution. If either one of those is false, we're not going to contribute anything, so a 0. So I'll go ahead and press enter there. You see that we do get a contribution. That looks correct. We have full-time and 3 years of employment. I'll double click here to copy it down, and it appears that our function is working. It's been written correctly. There's the function for you to look at. Now, this type of function, though, introduces a particular type of problem. If the person entering the data misspells status, enters full-time as one word, spells full-time with a hyphen, or as one word with only one L, misspells full-time, this is not going to return true. So we'll get a false, we won't make a contribution. We don't want to do that. We want to control the data that the data entry person can enter here. We're going to use data validation to do that. So let's introduce that. We have 2 options. We have full-time and part-time to enter here. So I'm going to limit what the user can place in this cell by going up to the Data tab, going over and selecting Data Validation, and then selecting Data Validation. Now here, I'm going to restrict. Instead of allowing any value in this cell, I want to create a list of values, and I'm just going to create the list. I'm not going to use any quotes. I'm just going to write the words full-time spelled just the way they appear, and a comma, and then no space, just the word then part space time. Those two. I can go in and create an error alert for this. This is a stop validation. I can have it so that the person can go ahead and put the wrong data in there and just get a warning. But I don't want that. I want the system to stop them, not to allow them to enter bad data. I'm going to put a title on the message box that comes up, just data entry error. And then I'm going to instruct the user, please select full time or part time from the list. And often it's useful to provide some instruction about how to continue. Users can get kind of bound up in this. I usually tell them to press the escape key to continue. I'll say OK. Now this is set. You can see I get a little combo box here, and I have full or part-time. And if I try to enter something like full-time, it will stop me. It will pop up this error, and please select full-time or part-time from the list. Press escape to continue, so I can press escape. That will set it back to where it is. Now I can select from the list. Now I don't want to have to do that for every one of these. So I can right-click here and select copy. Then I'm going to select all of these. I can select down further and then right-click on them. And I'm going to select paste special. And from the paste special dialog box, I'm going to select validation. See, I don't want to copy everything because there are some full-times and some part-times. And if I just copy and paste, I'll change all of the part-times to full-time. I don't want that. That will mess up my data. I just want to copy the validation portion of this cell. So I'll say OK. And you'll notice that it leaves them all full-time or part-time, but it places that data validation in each cell. So that's the if function exercise.